What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. Well, the Boris Johnson government is now going nuclear with the Brexit negotiations and what will follow if the EU, Parliament or the courts delay Brexit, stating any EU nation that supports a delay to Brexit will be considered as hostile interference in the UK's domestic affairs. And if Brexit is delayed and Boris Johnson wins a majority at the next election, he will revoke every single EU law instantly and leave without any negotiations immediately, which seemed like it made Emily Maitliss soil her drawers in fear. She had Newsnight's political editor on the show discussing Number 10's communications with The Spectator, which put the fear of God into Maitliss. So let's check it out.
This source to James Forsyth, who is the political editor of The Spectator, and it begins by saying the negotiations will probably end this week. Now, we can look at some of the languages in these texts. So the first one we'll look at is looking at the view that Britain might take towards countries that are helpful towards the UK and those that are not so helpful. And this person on that says, "We will make clear privately and publicly that countries which oppose delay will go to the front of the queue for future cooperation. Supporting delay will be seen by this government as hostile interference in domestic politics." And evidently this source is saying that the cooperation they're talking about is things like defence and security cooperation.
Well, it's good news from the start of that clip. Negotiations will be over by the end of the week, which, since this show was last night, information has now come out that the negotiations are actually over now because Merkel wants to keep Northern Ireland in the customs union forever, which is never going to fly. So Number 10 have come out and said that a Brexit deal is now impossible, not only now, but forever. There is no chance of ever getting a deal, which is good news because no Brexiteer, it seems, actually wanted a deal now if they ever did before. The pointless delays and backhanded tactics used by the EU and our own MPs aimed at blocking the democratic vote of the British people has pissed a lot of people off, including those who voted Remain. So now a lot of people just want a clean break and they want it done by the end of the month. But the best bit about this communication is when the government source states, "We will make clear, publicly and privately, any country who opposes delay will go to the front of the queue when it comes to future cooperation. Anyone supporting a delay will be seen by this government as hostile interference in domestic politics, sending them to the back of the queue where they would deserve to be." It's about time Boris Johnson and his team started playing hardball with the EU and Parliament. This is how you negotiate when you're facing a hostile takeover, which, make no mistake, that is what we are facing now. Theresa May never had the will or required testicles to even consider using the bog standard tactics used when dealing with hostile opponents like the unelected EU and these shitweasels in Parliament. This is something the UK should have said from day one. Any nation or entity seen to be working against the British people's vote will be considered a hostile force and treated as such. That is how the leaders of old would have done it, so I'm glad to see Boris Johnson and his team are taking this route. We are great fucking Britain after all, not some 2-bit tin pot nation for fuck's sake.
There's another really interesting text where essentially this source is acknowledging that this backbench act, the so-called Ben Act, which would require an extension if there's no deal by the 19th of October, that may work. But then this source says any delay, this is a message to the EU, any delay will in effect be negotiated between you, the EU, Parliament and the courts. Everything to do with duty of sincere cooperation, this is that you have to behave if you remain a member of the EU, will be in the toilet. We will focus on winning the election on a manifesto of immediately revoking the entire legal order without further talks, and then we will leave.
Gosh, Nick, thanks very much indeed.
Well, we heard there the government are saying there might not be a way out of the Ben Act, which is of course possible. But I'm inclined to believe this is just a diversionary trick aimed at throwing the Ramonas off the scent should the government have a way to get out of the Ben Act via either EU law that states we leave on Halloween, the Civil Contingencies Act, or by some other means they are keeping close to the chest. But the government are framing it right in the sense that any delay will not be a government negotiated delay, it will be negotiated between the EU, Parliament and the courts, which would mean the EU's own standards on sincere cooperation would be breached. So the Boris Johnson government has said they would run on a manifesto to immediately revoke the entire EU legal order without further talks, and then we will leave in what has to be the best statement attributed to this government I have heard so far. That there, I feel, is also opening up the possibility that Boris Johnson and Nigel Farage pact could well be on, because that is exactly what Farage asked for when he publicly offered Boris Johnson an election pact a few weeks ago. Boris Johnson telling the press, and by extension the EU, that any delay will not be sanctioned by this government or the British public means the responsibility for the delay falls on the Ramona MPs in Parliament, the EU SSR and the Supreme Court, not on Boris Johnson, because the delay is not government policy, and since we all know this government is being given confidence and supply by the Labour Party, who are too chicken to have a general election, Boris Johnson lacks the power to actually do anything. So essentially, Parliament is in charge of this country right now, and will be the only people deserving of blame should we end up with another Brexit extension, because Boris couldn't force one if he wanted to. I expect most of Parliament would vote against it just because they want to be against Boris Johnson, as it seems to be their only concern right now. But you know it's great news when you hear Emily Maitliss say gosh, because she is horrified at what Boris will do if they get a delay. At the end of the day, she knows the country supports Boris because she has seen the same polls that we all have. She knows the country supports Boris because she has seen the same polls that we have all seen. So should he run on that manifesto, between him and Nigel Farage, they will have a healthy majority in Parliament to literally take us out of the EU without any deal within a matter of days or weeks of winning an election. Maitliss is generally worried now because even if they get their delay and think they've won, but should Boris be re-elected, he will move to revoke all EU laws and leave instantly, and there would be literally fuck all these Ramonas or the EU could do about it. We would be bathing in Ramona tears. So guys, buy your rubber inflatables and prep the cocktails. We will be having a nationwide saltwater pool party soon enough. Well, I'm going to end the video there anyway. I want to thank the channel's PayPal, Patreon and Subscribe Star members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot. And I will see you all in the next one.
This Parliament is a dead Parliament. It should no longer sit. It has no moral right to sit on these green benches. They don't like the truth. Twice they have been asked to let the electorate decide upon whether they should continue to sit in their seats, while they block 17.4 million people's votes. This Parliament is a disgrace, but they're too cowardly to give it a go. But the time is coming. The time is coming, Mr. Speaker, when even these turkeys won't be able to prevent Christmas.